All right. I get down to the very end and realize that the batteries are dead on my prompter thing. So, hey, what can I say? At least I'm here. I'm grateful to be with you tonight. It's been a while, and I've got to tell you, I've missed you. It doesn't feel right when I go that long without doing a fireside. And I got to tell you, I had one prepared last week to give you, and I'd pre-recorded it on the banks of the Sea of Galilee. And I sent it home, and something glitched, and it never happened. So I apologize for that. I promised you it would be there, and it wasn't there, and I felt bad ever since. So anyway, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I can follow this along for a few minutes. Anyway, what I was going to say was that I am home for another month, and then I go back to Israel again on the 26th of October. And I'll be over there for, 2 to 3 weeks with a couple more tour groups going through Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. But I'm home for a month, and in that month, Annie gets married, and Adam is launching his new business, and so there's a lot going on. In fact, let me mention that to you right now. Like I said, Adam and his older sister, Donnie Joe, have started a handyman business together, the two of them. And they've been on the ground and going now for a few months, and work has slowed down a little bit. You know, if any of you have a handyman job, like you need a wall built or you need something installed, something like that, I've got a boy that's really looking for work and would really appreciate the help. If you've got something, why, send me a message and I'll put you in touch with him. He's a hard worker, and he is trying to support himself and help his sister. So anyway, just a thought there. I wanted to announce and remind you on the 22nd of October, that's Saturday, October 22nd in St. George, will be the next Knowing Joseph seminar, and I'll be one of the speakers there along with others. And it will be on finding hope through the restoration. I've been thinking a great deal about it and getting ready for it. So if you're interested, or if you're in the St. George area, that's Saturday, October 22nd in St. George. Tickets are available at historyofthesaints.org. There are still seats available. We'd love to have you come. And then also from History of the Saints, this coming Saturday morning at 9:30, just going into conference, History of the Saints will present a special presentation leading into conference on the Joseph Smith papers. So, hey, this coming Saturday morning, 9:30, KSL television here locally, or KSL.com if you're abroad, is this latest History of the Saints special on the Joseph Smith papers. Okay. If I may begin now, I think I've covered all the housework. Are you doing okay? Are you there? I'm not even sure there's anybody there, given this technology. Doesn't that look kind of funny with my face stuck right up there in the screen like that? Okay, first story. This was just a few days ago. We were in Jerusalem at the Temple Mount. The whole group of us, some 85, 86 of us, Bernell and Roseanne Christensen helping lead the group, we had gotten up early. We arrived at the Temple Mount, followed all the protocols to go through security, and finally we got up on the Temple Mount. We had only been there a few minutes, told a couple of stories, moved up closer to the Dome of the Rock, when all of a sudden men came out of nowhere and ordered us off the mount, just for no reason. We had another hour there that we were allotted to be there, but they drove us off of the mount. Well, to say the least, we didn't get to see what we wanted, and we were disappointed. Well, we obediently left and congregated down below the Temple Mount near the western wall. And there, our guide, an Israeli named Yair, began to explain to us the significance and the meaning of the Western Wall. I suppose it was a bit of a surprise to hear him teach that to call it the Wailing Wall is an anti-Semitic insult from long ago used against the Jews. It is properly and to them known as the Western Wall. And it is a sacred and holy place to them. It is the closest that they can get to their ancient holy place in the Holy of Holies, the temple. And it is the most sacred site in the world to a Jew. As Yair spoke, he talked of the Holocaust and of his people dying for no other reason than their religion. He spoke with pride of his nation and the privilege of defending it that had been his, as he spoke of the love that he felt for his country. And I do mean love. I was reminded of a prophecy of Isaiah regarding modern-day Israel and their gathering. It reads, quote, "For as a young man marrieth a virgin, so shall thy sons, Israel, marry thee. And as the bridegroom rejoiceth over the bride, so shall thy God rejoice over thee." Isaiah 62:5. Yair described his feelings for his country himself as a romance. And in listening to him, one could not help but feel his love of and passion for his homeland. Indeed, he is a man married to his country. Now, of course, there are partisan and divisive issues in Israel, and others on the other side feel the same as he. But Yair did not dwell on hate. He did not dwell on condemnation of others. He spoke with pride and righteous patriotism of his country and of his love for it. He is a man married to his nation as by covenant. As I listened to him, I felt a sense of pained envy. Where are those young men and women in America who are married to their nation as Yair is to his? Those who care more about the peace and well-being of America than their partisan agendas or popularity among men on the internet. I'm assured they're there, and someday soon those patriots, righteous patriots, will be brought forward in the covenant to save this nation from within. Oh, that all of us would, in righteousness, be married to our nation. Second story. This takes me back a ways in the sharing of this story. I had an experience some years back in my truck driving days, that could only be called a sensory adventure. Here was the trip. I began that day early in the morning, standing on the lush green banks of the North Platte near Glen Rock, Wyoming, right near the old Pioneer Trail. The river ran slowly and was rife with birds and life and vegetation. It was beautiful. Then I turned my face west, crossing the Wyoming high desert above 6,000 feet in elevation. It was hot and unbelievably dry out there. The vegetation out on the high plains of Wyoming was sparse, low-growing sage and bunch grass. It was as opposite from the North Platte as anything you can imagine, but the contrast was the beauty of it. It was in a place such as that Moses and Abraham found their God, the desert. Well, I continued on west. I climbed 3,000 feet up into the mountains, and as I did, I rolled down my window and caught the rich, wonderful aroma of the pine and fir in the Grovant mountain range. I pulled over close to the summit of Togedy Pass and walked about 200 feet off the road out into the pine trees. I was swallowed up by the forest, and from then on, all I heard there were the sounds of nature: scolding squirrels, singing birds, creaking trees. I stood atop a high bluff, and I could hear the unique sound of the descending mountain stream below me. I love music, but there are few compositions that can compare with a mountain stream. I looked down, and there at my feet noticed the last drops of a recent rain trapped in the trough of lupine leaves. I knelt down. The rich alpine soil was as soft and fluffed as a pillow. I offered there a quick and quiet prayer. As I did so, the sun came out and felt like an oven-warmed blanket on my back. With my eyes closed, I became conscious then of a gentle breeze sweeping up over that mountain. It was like a cooling caress. I moved on, climbed back in the truck, drove down the mountains, went into Jackson Hole. As I journeyed south through the valley, the Tetons loomed off to my right. Now I can see why the early explorers of that area called them the Pilot Knobs. Any traveler within eyeshot can get his bearings if he'll just look up. And maybe that's why God created such things, so we would look up once in a while. Think higher and be inspired by something besides the worldly and the mundane. The Tetons. You had to see it. They were shrouded like ancient Sinai in dark storm clouds, adding all the more to their mystery and majesty. I couldn't get enough. The Snake River Canyon. I went on through that and along the South Fork where the river rafters and fishermen like to play. It's this river where sunlight so often sparkles off that water to make one think it is a river of diamonds. And then, from the Palisades above Palisades Reservoir, I stared down with appreciation, noticing how the water in the reservoir, usually blue, reflected now the iron gray of the thunderstorm above it. Well, by now, it was late in the day, and I was almost home. Coming along Interstate 15 south of Idaho Falls with my window down, all of a sudden I caught the sweet, musty smell of curing alfalfa. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was back to my childhood on the hay crews on the ranch. I noticed as I drove on through the patchwork quilt of fields, some green, others ripening shades of yellow. Just before I reached home, I passed through the lava rocks just outside of Blackfoot and caught the distinct, wonderful smell of rain-soaked sage. And then I was home and glad to be there. It had been a long day. Now, with all that I've just said, just in case some of you might think I had been up in my truck way too long, may I remind you of the word of the Lord. Quote, "The fullness of the earth is yours. All things," he said, "which come of the earth in the season thereof are made for the benefit and the use of man, both to please the eye and to gladden the heart. Yea, for food and for raiment, for taste and for smell, to strengthen the body and enliven the soul." End of quote. And that's exactly what my day had been. I had been strengthened in body and enlivened by soul, in soul, by my road trip. My friends, this is the season for a road trip. Yeah, gas is expensive. But what costs more? Gas or depression and discouragement, boredom and misery? Get out. The earth is a gift of joy and life. It's all yours. Go get some. Now. Speaking of which, I was out on a road trip just yesterday. Good luck to you. Now, this next story is a little out of the ordinary for me because it's so yuck, but I need to make a point. Earlier, before I had gone to Israel, my daughter Hannah and I were leading a group through England, and we stopped in Liverpool. And there with the group and with my beautiful daughter Hannah, we stood on those hallowed docks, the Albert Docks at Liverpool, and I wanted to impress upon this group the magnitude of the sacrifice of their pioneer fathers and mothers that they made in leaving their homelands, usually over those very docks, and journeying on to Zion, here. Now, I remembered a scholar friend of mine telling me once, Bill Hartley, that oftentimes the most terrifying and dangerous portion of their journey from home to Zion in the valley of the mountains, the most dangerous part was often the ocean voyage. Well, to illustrate that point, I shared this account from Mary Ahlstrom Rawson of Denmark. She gives you some idea what it was like. She said, quote, "When I was 18, my parents were converted to a new religion, which was brought to their door by two traveling missionaries representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly called Mormons. The principles of Mormonism were explained with such clarity and power, substantiated by so much Bible evidence, that our family soon became converts. My parents and myself were baptized by immersion into the Mormon Church on April 6, 1854. One of the doctrines of the Mormon belief is the assembling together in the land of Zion of the people of Israel from the nations of the earth. In order to obey this principle, it was necessary for us to dispose of all our belongings and travel over sea and land to faraway Utah in the United States of America. Our friends and kindred did all in their power to dissuade us against what seemed to them a foolish credulity. Despite their pleadings, we left our beloved home in October 1855. The family consisted of father, mother, and 8 children, the youngest a babe under 2 months of age. Our first stop was at Aalborg, which had been appointed a temporary gathering place for Mormon converts. When instructions came for us to proceed to Copenhagen, we bundled up the ailing children and took them with us. We had a rough crossing over the North Sea to England and suffered much from seasickness. At Liverpool, we embarked on an old sailing vessel named the John J. Boyd, which had formerly been used as a cattle ship. An immigration company had chartered and remodeled it for use in carrying Mormon converts across the Atlantic. It was the 12th day of December, 1853, that would be 1863, when our ship was towed out of Liverpool Harbor, loaded with fresh water and provisions for the long voyage. There were 512 Mormon converts aboard when we started, but the death rate was especially high among the children who had been weakened by the measles. We had bad weather and heavy seas right from the first, but on Christmas Eve the ship was struck by a hurricane, and for a time it seemed that the old windjammer was doomed to be swallowed up in the sea. The storm raged so furiously that the luggage chests, which were tied to posts on the deck, broke from their moorings and were hurled about with such force as to endanger life and limbs. All passengers were therefore ordered into their bunks, where we crouched in misery, listening to the shrieking of the winds and wishing we were back in our comfortable homes again. While in mid-ocean, fire broke out on the first deck and burned through the floor to the second deck before it was discovered. The smoke became so dense we were nearly strangled. Some of the people wanted to jump overboard, but Knut Peterson, our leader, said, "Stay on the ship. Keep calm. The fire will be extinguished and the ship will reach New York safely." A few nights later, she continued, we had a collision with another ship that almost knocked a hole in our ship. Our captain had always been very cruel to the sailors. Now he flogged them worse than before, claiming the collision had been due to the crew's negligence. On February 2nd, we saw a ship drifting helplessly before the wind. We steered toward it 4 days before we were able to reach it and rescue the 36 sailors who were clinging to the rigging. They were a great help in sailing our ship, as most of our own men were too badly disabled to work. About this time, 2 of my little brothers died and were buried at sea. That was a severe blow to my mother. She never seemed the same after that. I can imagine nothing more dreary than was our existence during that voyage on the John J. Boyd. But it came to an end at last, and we landed in New York, February 16th, 1856, having been 66 days in crossing the Atlantic from Liverpool. End of quote. The next time you think on the sacrifices of your pioneer fathers and mothers, don't just focus on the trail. Think about and remember those who risked all just on the crossings of the ocean. Okay, let me take a break for a second. Are you doing all right? I hope and pray that prayer is in your heart for me and for everyone listening, because I know for a fact there are some tonight listening who just need some encouragement and some love and the comfort of the Spirit, and you can have a lot to do with that. Another announcement. You probably have heard about this, but after traveling all over the world, I'm taking a favorite tour of mine in just a few days. On October 5th through the 7th, we're doing a church history tour through northern Utah, up into Idaho, into Teton Valley, across into Jackson Hole, Wyoming, down through Star Valley, Wyoming, then through Bear Lake and down along the Bear Lake, and finally into Cache Valley and back home. We'll be gone the 5th through the 7th. And it's going to be church history, state history, local history, just probably even some botany lessons along the way, since it's my home country. And it'll be a 3-day trip, and there are only 6 seats left. If you would like to come on this trip, you still can. Go to GlennRawsonStories.com, check it out. It's as cheap of a trip as I can possibly make to get all of you the opportunity so that we can come out and just spend some time together. That's this coming October 5th through the 7th. Go to GlennRawsonStories.com if you're interested. I would love to have you. Like I said, 6 seats left on the bus, so if you want to come, you better hurry. The next trip I wanted to let you know about is, yes, indeed, contrary to what some of you have heard, I am taking another group on the Mormon Battalion tour down through San Diego and across the Mormon Battalion Trail near the end of January 2023. If you'd like to come on that, you're more than welcome to come. Again, that's at GlennRawsonStories.com. Also, next year, I'm going to take a group and go do church history in Hawaii, and then I'm going to do an American history tour on the East Coast in 2023. And then Dennis Lyman and myself will take a church history tour, note this, across the trail from Nauvoo to Salt Lake. That'll be the end of June 2023. That tour is available at historyofthesaints.org, or just call Dennis. He'll set you up on it. So I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling. I'll be writing books as I go, and I'll be doing firesides the whole time as long as the technology will keep working. And it would just be a lot of fun to have you there. Every time I go, I make new friends. And my joy is spending time with you. Well, speaking of new books, I hope this isn't out of line. Some of you were interested in a sequel to Tempering Steel. Here's a snippet from the sequel. You haven't read or heard this. This takes place just west of Tooele, Utah, on Interstate 80. Same characters you already know. Here you go, just a snippet. J.O., Shawnee said, looking up at him, call 911 and tell them we have a woman in labor with a prolapsed cord. Give them our location and ask for air evac. Give them my name, and in the meantime, drive, my love, drive. She smiled reassuringly as she said it. Seconds later, J.O. had the massive rig rolling toward Salt Lake City across Interstate 80 at more than 90 miles per hour. The truck was as quiet as a luxury car, and there was no indication in the interior of the incredible speed the vehicle was traveling. J.O. drove the behemoth with one hand and operated his cell phone with the other, calling the hospital first and then Hannah's husband, Charlie. All the while, Shawnee continued to strain against the powerful contractions that racked Hannah's petite frame. Somewhere west of Tooele, the Utah Highway Patrol swept in behind them with lights flashing, one car taking position behind and the other running in the front. They'd only gone a mile or so when a helicopter ambulance swooped over the top of them and landed on the roadway ahead. J.O. rolled to a stop 30 yards from the chopper. The paramedics ran with a gurney toward them. Seconds later, they had Hannah strapped to the gurney, and with Shawnee still pushing, they loaded Hannah into the chopper and leaped into the sky toward the east. In seconds, they were over Salt Lake City. "Take care of Maddie, please," Hannah had sobbed as they had loaded her into the chopper. "I've got her," J.O. said with a comforting smile. "We'll be right behind you." "Would you like us to escort you in?" one of the officers said. "I don't think so," J.O. said as he lifted little Maddie into his arms. "Thank you. But I see no need to go at breakneck speed any further. Right now I might as well slow it down and take care of this little angel. She's terrified. I'll help her and get her to her mother as soon as I can." End of quote. That's a snippet from the book, the sequel to Tempering Steel. Maybe I'll continue sharing those with you if you're interested. If not, I'll just keep it to myself. Okay. Every now and again, and it's been this way for years, experiences that are long forgotten in my past come up, and suddenly they come into focus, and what before was just a vague memory becomes a powerful lesson. And that's what happened this week. Over the last week or so, this story keeps coming back to me. And finally, I sat down and focused my efforts on the story and realized what someone was trying to tell me. This is long towards about 40 years ago. I was just a young truck driver, and I had an experience that left a very deep impression on me. It came back to me. I'd never written it down until just a couple of days ago. Here's what happened. I was driving an 18-wheeler. Where? On the 2-lane country road between Randolph and Woodruff, Utah. I had delivered a load in Evanston and was now on my way back home to Pocatello, traveling empty. It was a pleasant summer day. A light rain had fallen, just enough to wet the highway. I was driving along at the speed limit with a Hostess fruit pie in my right hand. Just then, I came up over a small hill, and there in the middle of the road was a 4-wheel drive pickup, dark green as I recall, stopped in the middle of the road, or at least moving so slowly I couldn't tell. One thing I could discern in a moment was that there was no way to go around that pickup. There was nowhere to go. A glance revealed that the driver was contemplating a left-hand turn but couldn't make up her mind. I had no idea what to do. I had no choice. I stomped down on the brakes. Now, any of you that have driven a big rig knows exactly what happened next. The tires locked up on that rain-slick road and began to slide. In less time than it takes for me to tell you what was happening, I was sliding sideways, out of control, and the trailer was coming around to meet me. My last glance out the passenger side window as I spun this way was of me bearing down, sliding sideways down the highway, and my trailer going over top of that pickup. I was going to crush her into a grease spot. Well, when the sliding, grinding, scraping, and skidding were all over, I was pointed back the way I had come. Mind you, this is a narrow 2-lane road. And my trailer was right there. It's supposed to be back there, but it was right here, right on my door. I looked down at my right hand at what had been a delicious fruit pie. It was crushed and spread all over me and the cab of my truck. Angry? Oh, mama. I kicked open the driver's door and shook my hand free of the mess and ran around the trailer to see if I had killed the driver of the pickup. Well, to my surprise, the pickup was gone. I looked and it was several hundred yards down the highway. I stood and glared at it. Then the backup lights came on and the driver reversed to where I was standing. Again, to my surprise, a young woman got out. She was visibly shaken and scared. Can you imagine seeing an 18-wheeler coming down the highway sideways right at you? Well, anyway, she apologized profusely and my anger melted away. I'm a soft touch. What can I say? She explained that she was driving along this road. She didn't know the road, looking for a turnoff, but wasn't sure where it was. Well, she had stopped in the middle of the road to get her bearings and see if this was her turn. And all of a sudden, I came barreling over that hill, no way to see her, nearly killing her. There was no damage to her pickup, so she went on her way. The damage to my rig was minor. The fruit pie, however, was a total loss. Now, I recently returned just a couple of days ago from Israel. I spent 16 and a half hours in the air and several hours in busy airports to get home back here to Utah. I was tired, I was grumpy, and here I was coming down the airport concourse, walking right along with the great herd of humanity through the airport, when some guy suddenly stopped right in the middle of the crowd and checked his cell phone obliviously. The rest of us nearly ran right over the top of him. We parted and went around him, and he kept looking at his phone. A few steps further, and we encountered several young people, friends, chatting it up. Where? Right in the middle of the walkway. They paid no attention as all the rest of us got in single file and squeezed around them to make our way to baggage claim. Okay, I sound like an old pickle sucker. These are minor irritations of mortality. They come with the territory. But, and here's my point, it is major, impactful, and eternal when we can't make up our mind about the gospel of Jesus Christ. The restored gospel of Jesus Christ moves forward Israel like a great caravan. And when someone in the ranks suddenly stops, loses faith, and starts questioning everything, not only does it destroy the happiness of those who love that person, but it affects the forward progress of all of us. I remember Gordon B. Hinckley saying, "We're only as strong as our combined strength." And when one of us falls, we all suffer in a measure. So I say to you and to everyone out there, whatever it may be, my beloved friend, whatever it may be that troubles you, causes you doubts, keep the faith and keep moving forward with the great caravan of God. I promise you that in time you will indeed see and know for certain that the Lord Jesus Christ is out in front leading us all. Okay. All right. Again, stay with me here for a moment. You're going to think I'm crazy. Next story. You ready? Hey, diddle, diddle, the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. End of quote. Well, this was years ago, but I happened to be walking through one of the rooms in our house, and I overheard my wife reading this nursery rhyme to our daughter. When all of a sudden Annie, that daughter, blurted out, "That is so weird." I stopped and turned around. "What's weird?" I asked. With a tone of ridicule, Annie said, and you'd have to know Annie, this is Annie, she said, "That book is so weird. Cats can't play the fiddle, cows can't jump over the moon, and dogs don't laugh." I don't know where she got that one. And she continued, "Dishes do not run away with spoons. That book is just weird." Well, Annie left no doubt by her tone what she thought of the veracity of Mother Goose. But for me, I was taken aback, as much by what she said as that she said it in the first place. At that time, Annie was only 5 years old, and already my beautiful little girl recognized, some books are true, and some books are, well, silly, weird, not true. Now, you know where I'm going with this. There's a story here. Trust me. There is power in truth that steps over the limits of time. Truth is knowledge of things as they are, as they were, and as they are to come. We are beings of truth and light, and the very sum of our mortal existence is to search out truth and live by it and improve our intelligence. Where we find truth, we find light. And those who love truth will seek after it and be embraced by those who love truth also. By the power of the Holy Ghost, we may be guided to the truth of all things and be made free. Indeed, God is God and all-powerful by reason of his knowledge of truth. He lives to give us truth. But truth is so hard for us to bear because it's so hard against sin and error. And so herein is the ultimate agency for us. As never before in this world's history, truth blazes all around us like the sun at noonday. Will we love it, receive it, live it, and be glorified by it? Or will we choose to walk in darkness at noonday, content with cheap fiction, endless entertainment, or truths mingled with the philosophies and theories of men? No wonder we have been encouraged to turn off the television and open up good books. If we really want reality that's real and of eternal worth, truth, go search in the depths where it glittering lies. I promise you, it is a treasure of eternal worth. Do not be content any longer with the false and the unedifying fiction all around us. Last story. And I hope this story makes the point. I've been concerned whether I should even share it. When I was just a lad, just 5 or 6 years old, my family moved to the Lemhi Valley up near the Montana border close to central Idaho, where my dad went to work as a ranch manager. Over the years, we moved away from that beautiful place in that valley years later. But to this day, almost 60 years later, the Lemhi Valley was and still is my home. Even now, for me and my mother, our hearts are still there. Little did we know that at the age of 18, that when I became a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I had ties to that valley and didn't know it. You see, when I joined the church at age 18, my grandmother was already a faithful member of the church. And we were close confidants after I became a member. We became very close. One day, my grandmother told me the story of my pioneer ancestors, faithful members of the church who had come to Idaho from England. I was shocked to learn that my great-great-grandfather had been a branch president, that I had a family with a consecrated history. I came from pioneer stock. I had no idea. Years later, I was working on the History of the Saints television series and interviewing scholars about the efforts of Brigham Young and the Saints to colonize the West. Imagine my shock when I learned that, one, I had members of the Mormon Battalion that were members of my family, and two, in May of 1855, Thomas Sasson Smith led 27 men north into Indian country. They were called as missionaries to help the Indians, charged to do what they could to bring them to a better life. By June 12th, President Smith and his group were camped near the Salmon River in what was then Oregon Territory. And when welcomed to stay by the Bannock chief, Shuwuku, the Latter-day Saints put down roots, and Fort Lemhi was born. Cabins sprang up immediately. Crops were planted. And working with the Indians, they harvested fish from the teeming river. Prospects seemed promising at this far northern colony. By November, some 55 Indians had been baptized. Relations with the tribes were good. The short growing season had limited the harvest of their crops, and the harshness of the winter soon found the Indians standing outside the fort, begging for food. Well, by December, supplies ran short, and men returned to Salt Lake for supplies and reinforcements. The colony made it through the winter, and in the spring and summer of 56, battled grasshoppers that devastated the crops. By the winter, they were again short of food. They went to Salt Lake and came back with more. They nearly starved, but they got through the winter. In May of 57, Brigham Young traveled with 140 people to visit the mission. He commended them for the cleanliness of the fort, but questioned why they had gone so far away. And then, under Brigham Young's direction, the Lemhi mission became the Salmon River Colony. Permanence became the order of things. They were going to stay. His visit boosted morale among the settlers, and by that summer, word reached the Mormon settlements that an army was coming against the Mormons in Utah. The Indians of the Lemhi, as it had come to be known, were persuaded by white men to steal the Mormons' cattle and sell them to the army. At this same time, tensions between the different tribes mounted in the valley, with the Mormons caught in the middle. And finally, Thursday morning, February 25th, 1858, Indians attacked the settlers, killing 2 men and driving off over 200 head of stock. When word reached Brigham Young, he urged the remaining settlers to abandon the fort and return to Salt Lake. And leaving their improvements behind, the settlers turned south into the deep snow and made their way almost 400 miles to Salt Lake. Tragedy, however, did not end there. One of their number in an advance party was attacked and killed by Indians. At the close of the Utah War, the Latter-day Saints did not return to the Lemhi Valley. The fort crumbled into ruin, but the name Lemhi from the Book of Mormon became Lemhi and lived on in the name given to the valley, the river, the county, and even some of the Indians who lived there. That valley, that I had loved so much all my days and down to this day had a sacred history. I lived right on top of it, and I never knew. Here's the point. I wonder how many of you are just like me, living in homes and in families filled with the most powerful, inspiring history. You're sitting right on top of it, and you have no idea the strength you could draw from it. My friends, I hope you have a great week. Good night, and God bless.